but the water wars have begun. Now, for those of you looking for facts and numbers, Mexico is supposed to give us water from the Rio Grande of about 1,750,000 acre feet per year. So an acre foot of water is the size of an acre in terms of measurement, and then 1 foot deep of water in an acre of a square acre, 45,000 some square feet, and a foot deep, and that's 1 acre foot. Now, so far in the last 4 years, they've only delivered about 488,000 acre feet. So they're at least a million acre feet behind, which is an enormous amount of water for our farmers. Now, conversely, we provide them with water from the Colorado River because the drainage basin is a little bit different and it goes to Mexico. So they're like, we'll send it this way. You can irrigate Mexico down there, and you send us down the Rio Grande back this way, and we can irrigate up here. So it's more like a triangle where these two irrigation areas are going by shared water resources running south. That is not happening. So this is one of the reasons Trump's being kind of nasty down there. She's like, we want the water. You promised us all this water. Our farm can't produce. Now what? So tell me about it, Ransom, down there. What do you what do you know about this water rights thing happening?
It's actually kind of a big deal because you have so many different vested interests in this. Um, there's Mexico, there's Texas. You also have New Mexico, and keep in mind that, like I was saying, this map doesn't show it too good, but all the way up in New Mexico, it goes through Albuquerque and up into Colorado, where it starts, the Rio Grande River. But there is agriculture from one end of that all the way, like I said before, out here in the Gulf of America, down there by Brownsville and Corpus Christi, and you know, in the Gulf there. Um, but it's not just them. There's also treaties with the different tribes, like the Navajo and the Hopi, who have the water running through parts of their land. So they were promised water. Mexico was promised water. Texas is promised water. And then they claim that there's some kind of super drought happening here, which I don't really think there is. And matter of fact, those things might change this year, depending on monsoon season. So this is more about trying to control trade than it is about water. There's so much excess water that goes into the Rio Grande and dumps into the ocean that there's no real lack of water, except for maybe in the northern parts. And recently we've been having a lot of snowpack. They've been acting like it's drought, 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 but then we had several years of good snowpack. So eventually it's going to be hot and that snow is going to melt. And then they'll be talking about how, Elephant Butte and the other lakes that go along that are going to be overfilled. And then, what then? Severe flooding. And you won't hear anything about this water dispute then. Where'd they go? I'm alone.
Yeah, and then also, they were saying that even though even though there was a huge amount of snowpack this year, ridiculous record-breaking amounts where they couldn't even measure how deep it was because the rods that they pushed down through on the snowpack for the year, they weren't long enough. So they really don't know, but they were trying to make new, longer rods that they would probe down in to see what the actual depths of the snowpack were. They had the same problem like that about maybe 3 years ago. But now they're saying, oh, the temperatures are so hot that the snow melting so fast, so much faster than normal, that it's going to create a drought later on in the year. Now, wait a second. Larger ice mass and larger snow mass melts more slowly. So even if you have a quote unquote an enormous amount of heat, it's still going to melt more slowly and create microclimates in there. So I would ask, who's in charge of water management? Because if the water is melting, the snow is melting and turning into water, should we not be capturing that somewhere? Now, how are they already forecasting a drought? Because heat is making snow melt in summer, which it always does, the freeze-thaw cycle. But is somebody not responsible to capture that water as it moves downstream? Like it really just melts and it goes out into the ocean and there's no way for us to use it. That just doesn't sound like a viable excuse to me. It sounds like a talking point to get us into global taxation is what it sounds like. I don't believe the hype. I mean, the whole thing about that Swiss glacier as well. Snow melts in summertime. And there's a freeze and a thaw cycle that goes on year after year, millions and millions of years. Ever been to India? Do you know how many landslides go on in India every year? It's been like that since the 1800s. They want to pin one glacier failing on a full mountain range across the Alps on global warming because one glacier melted enough to where the water spilled over and caused a rock cascade. If nobody had been living there, it wouldn't have made the news. That river's back. Oh, yeah, down on the bottom there, you see the water starting to dam up behind that. Like the people who didn't get their houses wiped out in the landslide were probably like, oh, good. Oh, but they were on the wrong side of the landslide. Now that's filling up into a lake behind there. That'll break through eventually and cause a massive, downriver event there. That'll keep backing up, and it'll create a huge lake behind that, and it'll find its way over that. Eventually, that water will go over that because it's not meant to be a dam. And once it finds its way, it's going to start taking the debris with it, and it's going to break open. But this is another cycle of landslides come, rivers back up behind them, and the debris lodges loose, and you get massive tsunami downriver. And then it stabilizes after all the water comes back to some normal flow, and you get a new flow through the river. That's just part of the hydrological cycle, part of the freeze thaw cycle. Now, if that village was not there, you never would have heard of this. It would have been just another glacier that had a lot of snow in the summer, and then rock breaks, rock freezes. That water goes in there, and that think about. Water goes in there, and in the wintertime, it expands. Ice expands. Now, it might not fracture the rock immediately, but it'll melt in the summer, next summer, and then water goes in the next year, and it expands. Next year, expands. Melt, thaw, melt, thaw. Open up, and maybe after, hundreds of years, boom, it finally cracks off. Because those people who didn't have hydraulic tools before, do you ever see how anybody cracks a rock? They start with a little hole in there, and then they use some metal wedges, and they just hit one after, and they go down like a sewing needle, and they crack it that way. So if we can do it, it just takes these rocks fracture. It is nothing rocket science-y and global warming. It is just ice expands. And sometimes ice expands and, over a certain amount of time, then it just causes a fracture line to break off. And this is part of normal mountain building. It is just part of how mountains erode. So for them to come out with a straight face and say, oh, this is because of global warming is absolutely the most ridiculous thing. Just like these idiots saying that, oh, it's record snowpack, but expect a drought because, well, no, don't expect a drought. Expect massive reservoirs full of water. See, something's going wrong here where we're going to have a drought after record snowfall should melt off into record liquid that could be captured and used by our world. But oh no, in their globalist taxing world, we have to have a drought. So something seems more man-made here than it does natural, at least in my opinion. Maybe you can disagree with that.
No, actually, it's completely silly, the idea that you would be making a big deal about a glacier when we know that, what was it, the last glacial maximum 20,000 years ago? So just from that point to this point, it has been melting. And then again, exponentially, it started melting about 11,700 years ago at the beginning of the Holocene. So we know that these things have been melting for a long time. And guess what happens if you have a big ice cube, and this is a real phenomenon, if you put the ice cube out and it starts to melt, right when it gets the smallest, it starts to melt rapidly. And that's exactly what you're seeing on most of these glaciers, is that they're finally at the end of disappearing over the last 12,000 years. Now, it's kind of ridiculous to think that in the last I don't know, 200 years of industrial revolution that all of a sudden we made it start melting. No, it's been melting for 12,000 years at least, and probably all the way back 20,000 years at that whatever the peak was at the glacial maximum there. So it's all silly. And when I was a kid here, when they first started getting the global warming kind of narrative going, they started teaching that in my high school over here, and they were telling me that this mountain that I have behind me is called Sierra Blanca, named by the Spanish, the white mountaintop. That it was going to be ice free, and that in the near future we wouldn't see any snow on that. That thing has been covered in snow for the last 5 years every winter, and now it even the other day, stretching into spring, we're having snow there. So the whole idea is ridiculous. Another one they like to use to try to say that there's this massive amount of global warming is Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And they failed to explain to people that one of the reasons that one, is melting is because it's in the middle of Africa, for one thing. And it also has been decreasing in ice for the last 20,000 years, since whenever it was cold enough that altitude on Mount Kilimanjaro retained enough ice moisture to even make a glacier at that place. And now, the idea that it's not. And have you seen this? I've been recently noticing in the weather forecasting that now there's record cold high temperatures or record high cold temperatures. That's a new one on me. That's a whole new, little mental play with words there, that they're trying to make you think that there's record highs at the same time as telling you it's cold, and that they're having winter storms in North America at the end of spring coming on summer here in a few days, or 20 days, something like that.
Yeah, New England's getting pounded with some severe snowstorms right now, but you would never hear about that. And Kilimanjaro, that snow is sticking about quite a bit longer, and I think those glaciers are lasting through the year now. Now, that was something that had also been talked about. Oh, the glacier fields are going to be gone. But take a look at the recent surveys, and you would be shocked at the rebound on the glaciers up there and how long that snow and ice is lasting comparatively to what they would told you, like it was be gone forever.